Hello, everyone. Welcome back to It's a Wonderful Podcast and a far more romantic, pleasant, fun time it was this week, Jeannine, in New Year's
Yes.
Eve on the film. No more silent Swedish spookiness. This is pure old Hollywood hilarity, much like we started the series with 1938's Holiday, obviously Cary Grant, Katharine Hepburn. They are sat right behind me, which you can see because this is, of course, this month's special video podcast episode, as well as voted for on the app formerly known as Twitter by all our lovely supporters and followers over there. Put polls out every month, don't we, when the announcement posts go out about what the series are going to be for that month. The bracket was whittled down to Bachelor Mother from 1939. What I think, Jeannine, is one of the strangest titles, or one of the most kind of... Why is it called Bachelor Mother? It just sounds like a weird title to me. For it being a movie that I think is really good, is really, really fun, really funny, really charming, really witty. Everything you would want from an old Hollywood rom-com is in Bachelor Mother.
Yeah.
But as a title, as two words of a title, does it not just sound a bit odd to you?
Yes. I mean, I guess I get what they were going for. David Niven's a bachelor.
Yeah.
Um,
And
Ginger Rogers
Rogers is a
becomes
bachelor, I
she's a
suppose.
bachelor as well, kind of herself, and then becomes a mother. So I guess just putting both of those monikers on her as well as the both of them separately, kind of coming
Yeah.
together. But yeah, I don't know. It's a little goofy, but
Goofy in a good way, though, because what
yes.
I also think we do get today is a great deal of success and satisfaction on my part for finally making Jeannine realise that she does find David Niven attractive, because I've been convinced she does and would for a long time. And it took until this movie, I think, 349 episodes into its wonderful podcast. A handful of David Niven movies, to be fair.
I
A
mean,
little handful of them.
yeah.
I think most notably, as far as It's a Wonderful Podcast is concerned, Separate Tables from
Separate
1958. Yeah.
tables, yes. The bishop's
Doesn't
wife.
The Bishop's Wife, yes. He
Yes.
doesn't necessarily come across as great in Separate Tables by
No,
the
no,
end.
no. Yes.
But I think Bachelor Mother has every little bit of my belief in David Niven that he is the British William Powell.
Yes, I was definitely getting that in this film. I never saw him as a member of my old-timey actor crush list, but I don't know, something in this movie, his demeanor, his sweetness, his chemistry with Ginger Rogers, all of that had me kind of looking at him like, okay.
And you
So,
know full well he's able to be silly as well, and he's
yes,
quite
yes.
athletic, and he's very witty, obviously,
Yeah,
naturally, and has that charm
very
about
dry. Yes.
incredibly dry. I think it's all on full display
Mhm.
in this movie. I think this is probably... I mean, it might be his best kind of rom-com of the era,
Yeah.
that he made in Hollywood. He'd go back to Britain after this movie, after making this movie, I believe, to serve in the war, because
Okay.
obviously Britain had entered the war in 1939,
Yeah.
and it wasn't until 41 that the US did, and obviously David Niven's British anyway. But so I think he had those years where he was serving in the war.
Yeah.
But as far as the era goes, I've seen a small handful again of, whether it's screwball comedies or just more general rom-coms, of him playing these lighter characters, these more goofier characters, not
Yeah.
even in the bishop's wife sense, more of in a bachelor mother sense.
Yeah.
He's also in uh, Bluebeard's eighth wife with
Oh,
Claudette
okay.
Colbert and Gary Cooper. And I think he's really fun in that. And weirdly, the most memorable thing I can remember him from that movie, which has nothing to do with Bachelor Mother, by the way. I know we're 5 minutes into this and barely talked about the movie, but he wears a very, very tight pair of swim shorts in
Oh,
that movie, and it's harsh to look at, admittedly, for David Niven, but
goodness.
you know, go off, I suppose. But no,
Yeah.
I think he's wonderful in this. First and foremost, though, it's not even his movie; it's Ginger Rogers' movie,
Yeah.
all in all, and she is showing all the charm she usually has on full display herself in this movie.
Yeah.
I think all the comedic, capability of herself. There's the odd little bit of dancing you
Of
get as well.
course.
You have to have in any movie with Ginger Rogers of this era. But you get the really touching, moral, emotional core behind the whole thing as well. You get those sweet little quiet scenes. You get the teary-eyed sentimentality of
Yeah.
a movie like this, and Ginger Rogers oozes that. She's playing that
Yes.
so,
And
so
the
well.
screwball silliness. Yeah.
Yeah, I I really had a great deal of fun with it. It was the first time I'd
Mhm.
seen Bachelor Mother, because it's not very widely available in Britain, at least. I don't know what it was like for you watching this movie, Janine. It is not available on any streaming service in Britain,
Oh. Yeah,
Bachelor
it
Mother.
it was only available to rent for $3.99, so on
Oh.
various places, so it was available.
Well, at least if you're in the US, it is more readily available. There, you would have to buy it physically in Britain if you were to get it, and it doesn't have a great physical release. So, yay! Give it a good
Right.
physical release for God's sake, and I'll
Yeah.
happily add it to my ever-growing Morgan's movie collection. But isn't it nice to be back
Yeah.
New Year's Eve on film in a lighter sense? We went through the ringer last week with the Phantom Carriage,
Yes.
Janine. A lot. It
Yeah.
was a lot of just the worst person behaving more and more
Terribly.
terrible as the movie went
Yeah.
on, and it's so nice to get a palate cleanser right after it on
Yes.
the lightness scale
Yes, this
of
is very,
Bachelor.
light and charming and fun.
I have to assume you had just as much fun as I did watching this.
Oh, of course. I mean, screwball comedies are essentially rom-coms, and so I always have a lot of fun with that. Getting to see actors together that I haven't seen kind of combine yet, because there are always some various combination of actors that we know that are staples on this channel
Yeah,
that will ultimately kind of intermingle. So, we've seen a bunch of Ginger Rogers films, we've seen a bunch of David Niven films. So to see this combination is always kind of a fun thing to look forward to as well. And to see how the chemistry plays with two actors you haven't seen on screen together before, but you've seen them separately with other people. So yeah, it was a fun discovery to see. They really did have some great chemistry, and that played into David Niven seeming pretty appealing
yes,
to me on screen in
yeah.
this film as a romantic lead. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with this movie.
Well, before we get into some of the obviously the main plot and a few of the question answers that we do have to take a look at today as well, that we always love doing each week on the show, I will also give a mention to Garson Kanin, who directed this movie, who was
Yeah.
most known for writing such great rom-coms slightly
Yeah.
later as Adam's Rib and Born
Mm,
Yesterday
okay.
and things
Yes.
like
I
that.
love Born Yesterday.
Garson Kanin clearly is a rom-com aficionado and
Yes.
was even earlier than we may have originally realized, having obviously been very familiar with
Yes.
movies like Adam's Rib and Born Yesterday. But, with him as a writer, he also wrote this movie as well as directed it,
Yeah.
or at least helped to write this movie, was one of the writers on this movie. But I didn't actually know up until this is what's great and consistently great about what we do on It's a Wonderful Podcast. It acts as a discovery for us. We never profess to be
Yeah.
experts.
No.
We profess to continue
Have
to
an
grow our
appreciation.
knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah, we continue to grow our knowledge. We continue to discover. I didn't know Garson Kanin directed movies at all. I just knew him
Yeah.
as a writer.
Yeah.
So it's nice to know that maybe slightly earlier in his career, before he became a more prolific, just a
Mhm.
writer, he dipped his toe into directing and clearly just found a love for the rom-com.
Yeah.
And really stuck to it with his most known and most beloved movies. So
Yeah.
I like that. I like that.
Yes.
I think he does a really good job at breezing through this movie as well, making it feel very light when it needs to and making it feel very emotional when he
Yeah,
needs.
really well paced going through
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
It's the benefit of writer-directors, I suppose, isn't it?
Yes.
We get that with Preston Sturgis as
Oh,
well. We
yeah.
watched
Mhm.
a couple of times in recent months. At a similar sort of era, more early 40s
Yeah.
for Preston Sturgis. But let's get into some question answers, Jeannine.
Yes.
Like this.
Yes. So for our recent episode of It's Wonderful Podcast, of course, last week we talked the Phantom Carriage. So, we ask these questions every week related to whatever movie we discuss. And on Friday's show, we watched the Phantom Carriage. So we asked, what's your favorite ghost movie? And we got some good
Mm.
answers over on YouTube or over on Instagram. Manny Gonzalez 70 says Ghostbusters 2. I'm thinking at this
Ah,
time. So interesting. Most people go with the original Ghostbusters. So
they do.
Ghostbusters 2, I think, not as good as the first, but some really fun additions and elements happening in that
Yeah.
movie. Then we stay over on Instagram for our Wednesday question. We talked the film The Hate You Give. And so I asked,
Yes,
what is your
last week.
favorite coming of age drama? And a long time coming 59 says Dope. That's one I've heard a lot about, but I
Dope.
still haven't seen.
You know
So,
what? I haven't seen that either. Who was it who did that movie now? What was his
oh,
name?
I don't
Is it
remember.
Fukunaga?
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure it
Mhm.
was. Kerry Fukunaga.
Or is it
Sure it
Rick?
was. Rick Famuyiwa. I always
Yes,
mix them up.
Rick
One of
Famuyiwa.
them 2.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was him. But yes,
Okay.
I've always heard good things about Dope, but I have yet to see it. Going back to our ghost movie question over on Twitter, Mr. Me Seeks says, a ghost story, a meditative movie on time
Ooh.
and existentialism. It's so good. Not everyone's cup of tea, though. So,
A Ghost Story was one of those kind of, when I feel like it was like 2016. It was one of those somewhat earlier A24 movies when A24 was becoming really big, and it had
starting
done
to kind of get into this popularity. Yes, I vaguely remember hearing about this movie, but yes, I've
yeah.
not seen it.
I have the
Yeah.
image of that white sheeted little
Yeah, that's the
trailer.
GIF they used, yeah,
Yeah.
on Twitter. And David Carson also says, Ghostbusters, of course. Great
Ghostbusters,
answer.
yes, okay.
Yes. Same question over on YouTube. Liberty S_Sun says, House on Haunted Hill, starring Vincent Price,
Oh,
was
yes.
always my favorite ghost movie.
Well,
Yes.
at least Liberty, thank you, Liberty, for saying the right version of House on Haunted Hill as well,
Yes,
not
yes.
whatever the hell
Yes,
happened
the
in
1999 one has its fans, but yes, definitely would have to
inexplicably
go.
so. Um,
Definitely I gotta go Vincent Price.
you've
And
had
then
enough Ghostbusters love in this question. Give me some House on Haunted Hill.
yes, yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Then still on YouTube for our coming of age drama question. A Vulcan Nerd says, I have to go with the basics/classics of Stand By Me, The Goonies, and maybe The Breakfast Club. Guess some of
Yeah.
these are more comedy or adventure than serious drama, but still. Yeah, I think all of these do have drama in them for sure, particularly
Oh, definitely.
The Breakfast
Stand
Club and
by
Stand
me.
By Me. Yes, but The Breakfast Club also gets pretty dramatic as well.
Absolutely does. I think
Yes.
Stand By Me is less less comedic than The Breakfast Club as well. I think Stand By
Yeah.
Me is definitely more dramatic
Yes,
as a
100%.
as a movie.
Yes.
Great coming of age movies though. You can't
Yes,
fault
those are some solid
Ghost.
picks.
Yes, I like.
Um, then over on Blue Sky, PLD, a good friend, Paul
Ooh,
Denuzio,
yeah.
he answers the ghost question with a gif of The Shining. So,
I mean,
yeah.
fair. It is kind of a ghost movie, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
It is.
Yes, and I'm loving Jennifer over on Blue Sky as well. She's always been good at answering our
Yes,
questions. Jennifer
right.
1234 on Blue Sky. She gives her picks for coming of age drama. She says, "I have two, both of which have a strong connection to my late brother. To Kill a
Ooh,
Mockingbird, I was scout at that age, and that was my relationship with my brother. Wish Atticus was our dad. Stand by Me, best adventures with my brother on the train tracks. Hate that there will be no new memories." So, really appreciate her sharing that, and that she can kind of connect those films to great memories with her brother. So,
I mean, that's what movies have the ability to do, right? Act as catharsis, act
yeah.
as, memory banks, and that's a
Mhm.
really wonderful answer to give there, Jennifer. Thank you
Yes.
very much for sharing that and bringing that forward, showing your
Yes.
appreciation
Appreciate
for
that.
those movies in a
Yes.
particularly poignant way. That
Yes.
is really nice.
Yes, I always love her answers. And then we move on to TikTok,
Ooh,
for the coming
a lot
of
of
age
answers
drama.
today. Very nice.
Yes, people got very involved. Coming of age question, the final girl says, "Now and Then," My Girl, Easy A, and just so many. So, yes, those are
Yeah,
some
easy,
faves as
easy,
well.
easy.
Love Easy A. I mean, Easy A is definitely leans more towards a comedy, but we get some into some serious territory in
Get
terms
enough.
of,
You
you
get
know
enough.
you know, kind of gossiping and, wrong impressions of people and how damaging that can kind of be.
And I feel like
Um,
what we have there is we have Now and Then and My Girl, which is more kind of
yeah,
your
the dramatic.
generation,
Yes, oh,
and
yes, I think these were all
Easy A, which
films
is
that
more
I
mine.
yes, I think we did Now and Then and My Girl on the show for you in
We did
particular, yes,
on
uh
Morgan and Jeannine.
yes, and then we have Will Wilkins, who also says "Stand by Me," so that was a big
Stand
answer
By Me is popular.
for the coming of age. Then we move on to the ghost movie question, still on TikTok. Biggie agrees with my choice, which was surprisingly not Ghostbusters, because Ghostbusters is a general
Mhm.
favorite of mine. I said Stir of Echoes. I really like that film. That was my pick.
Fair. Yeah.
So Biggie just backs up my choice of great movie. And
Not
Final Girl again.
not the Ghost and Mrs. Muir.
I mean,
You do
I love
like
I
the Ghost
do,
and
I
Mrs.
do
Muir?
really love The Ghost of Mrs. Muir, but I think I had recency bias because I had watched Stir of Echoes just not that long ago, and I
No,
kind
okay.
of analyzed it a little bit because I was doing a video on it. So,
Mm.
I think that just had it in my mind, but there are so many, What Lies Beneath, Ghost and Mrs. Muir, and also the final girl's choice here, for me, it's Ghost with Demi
Ghost,
Moore.
of course,
It
yes.
holds such a specific memory around my grandparents for me. It's just such a good movie. So
It
another
is.
film we did in a ghost series on Morgan Hasn't Seen. So
It is.
yeah, Final Girl is
Very
coming with those
nice.
era picks similar to me. So
Very much so,
yeah.
very much so. I like that.
Yes.
Great answers there
Yes.
today. Big fan of that. I only brought up the Ghost and Mrs. Muir just to make myself feel good
Yeah.
again because that
No, I
was an
love that movie.
example of me. Well, it was an example of me insisting that you did find a particular gentleman attractive, and then you realizing that you did after
Yes,
watching the movie, which is exactly what happened today with Bachelor Mother.
yes, it's very similar. I saw Rex Harrison in My Fair Lady and his talk singing and his demeanor in that film, and he just was not attractive to me in the slightest. He was just older. And I was just like, And then we watched Ghost and Mrs. Muir, and I was just like, ooh, like very charmed by his Capitan Greg. and,
Oh, yes. And then you watched him
and
in Blithe Spirit and thought he was just weird.
yeah, yeah, it was,
Yeah.
like in between the two options. But yes, Ghost and Mrs. Muir, Rex Harrison, very, very attractive. So yeah, very much a similar case. David Niven just seems like scrawny, snooty, falut, and here He was silly and charming and, had a little kind of messy curl coming down, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay," and great chemistry with Ginger, and so I was definitely here. I was seated for David in this film.
Well, David Niven's playing the playboy son of a department store owner, isn't he?
Yes,
Mr. Merlin, as played
Merlin.
by
Yeah.
Charles Coburn as well, who obviously is probably most known as Piggy from Gentlemen Prefer Blondes,
Yes,
in his very rotund manner that he's
yes,
constantly fawning over Marilyn in the
yes,
movie. Um, he's a nice little supporting presence in this movie as well, because when it does get increasingly more silly, I
yeah,
think he does a really good job at giving the movie a sincere feeling
yeah,
within the silliness, because you know watching it that what's transpiring is complete lies, but
yes.
he's treating it so
So
sincere you
seriously,
want to
yes,
believe.
he's so excited, yeah, yeah.
Uh, and of course, what does actually happen in this movie, it rather comes about in an odd way, in a way that only I think a movie could, because you could nitpick and just say, well, why don't people keep files on certain people
Yeah,
and register people properly and all that kind of stuff? A
yeah,
baby gets left on an orphanage doorstep.
yeah,
Ginger Rogers, having just been dismissed from her temporary Christmas job — this is where the
yeah.
New Year's come in, of course,
At
it is
Merlin's department
oh,
store, yeah,
yes, at Merlin's department store. It's set around the holiday period. There's a nice big New Year's scene, which we'll come to, which is why we're doing it for this series. But
yeah,
she's just been relieved of her duties
yeah,
at Merlin's for the temporary Christmas period. So she's feeling pretty down on herself, and
yeah,
she's walking past this, and she sees an old woman put a baby on the doorstep of this orphanage and has something to say to her. Don't what are you doing
yes, "What
that
are you doing?
for?
Why are you leaving this baby?" She tries to say, "Oh, it's not mine, but he's such a good baby," and then she kind of runs off, and so she
Yeah,
kind of looks and sees the baby about to kind of roll over on the stoop, so she just goes to kind of reach for the baby so he doesn't fall over, and
yeah,
right at that moment is when the door is opened, and it looks like she is leaving the baby. So she
yeah,
picks up the baby, they ask her to come inside, and kind of start asking her all of these questions like she's the mother leaving this baby, and once she realizes what's happening, she says, "Oh, no, 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 this is not my baby. I just saw the baby on the stoop, and it looked like it was going to fall, and so I just held it so it wouldn't fall down." And they're like, "Sure, lady, we hear this all the time. People leave these babies and try to act like it's not theirs." So they think that's what she's doing, but she's genuinely like, "This is not my baby, I swear."
see, I think this whole continuing kind of gag in this movie
Yeah.
of everybody telling Ginger Rogers that she is the mother of this
Yeah.
baby. Everybody just never listening to what she has
Yes,
to say
because it is a
is
common thing that apparently happens with women lying about their, them being the mothers of these babies that they wanna leave. So then it's just
yeah,
people just think she's trying to be a bad mother and, like, abandon her baby, and she's like,
yeah,
"No."
because she even comes back to them verbally by saying, like, when I want to have a family, I'll get married and do it the right way, because you have to put that out there. It's 1939. We live in
Yes.
Hays Code times now.
Yes,
You
so she
can't
leaves.
just have unmarried babies going out there.
Exactly, exactly. So this is a way to kind of get around the single mother,
It does a
kind
good
of
job of
situation.
doing it though.
Yes. So she's like, "No," and she leaves the baby with them, but that was after she had already kind of started giving them her information, um,
Yes.
before she realized what was happening. So they have it taken down that, she works at Merlin, she was laid off and all of this.
I feel like an awful lot of the time in this movie though, and I'm not saying it doesn't comedically work, because I think it does comedically work, but how many times in this movie do kind of older, stuffier men insist they know about motherhood
Right?
directly to Ginger Rogers,
Yes,
who isn't a
exactly.
mother herself, but is the one who ends up almost being forced to take care of this
Right,
baby.
yes, because yeah, I mean, there are plenty of scenes where David Niven is coming with these parenting books and trying to tell her what's what on how to care for this baby. So,
Which
it
apparently you feed a
definitely
baby, don't you? You feed a baby by apparently rubbing food into its navel,
Yes, that was a whole kind
so
of
the book
funny
says.
scene. Yes. Um, but yeah, there is this kind of weird underpinning of men trying to tell women what to do and how to care for these babies. Like,
And, like, yes, it's done in a comedic way, which is
mansplaining. Yes.
it's horrendous mansplaining, but
Yeah.
I think it works comedically because the
Yes.
movie's recognizing that it's mansplaining. It's not
Yes.
coming with this moral high ground.
Yeah.
It's portraying these mansplainers essentially as buffoons
Yeah.
in the scenes.
Yes.
So I kind of like that about it. Again, I think Garson Kanin can be pretty good at putting fairly buffoonish men
Yeah.
into movies that he writes.
Yeah.
Which is, Born Yesterday, Broderick Crawford gorillaing around the movie as he does,
Yeah.
just is terrible. I mean, Spencer Tracy in Adam's Rib doesn't necessarily come across as great,
No.
does he, a lot of the time.
Yeah, so we do get
Um,
kind of these men who think they know best type characters,
yeah,
for sure. But yeah,
plain foil though.
yes. So yeah, the fact that no one believes her when she's trying to tell them. I mean, I think she could just go see a doctor and see that, she's obviously not producing
Well,
any
see, this is
milk
what
or
I'm.
there's no
Yes, yeah.
signs of her having just had a baby. But for the sake of this film, no one believes her and she ends up just
No,
kind of being saddled with this
there's
child.
no sense. There's no sense to
No, no, no,
why
no.
she did this
There's
child.
no bother to do a test because this is just something that
No.
happens. Women constantly lie about leaving their babies because they don't want to deal with the embarrassment or shame or whatever. So they think that's what she's doing, especially when they kind of go to Merlin's and find out that she's been fired. So they think she's leaving
Yeah,
the baby behind because she has no way to take care of it because she's been fired. So the guy from the orphanage place goes to Merlin's and seeks out David Niven, who is, kind of co CEO or,
yeah,
CFO kind of thing under his father. But he's a playboy. He's there only kind of when he needs to be there. He's not really there for any kind of official capacity. Uh but his father likes to have him around. So the man from the foster home goes to talk to him and says, "Hi, do you have this woman working for you? We found out that she's been fired. We're going to need you to give her job back because she, left her baby because she can't care for it because she's been fired from here. So, now knowing this information, I think it's very important that you give her job back." So he's like,
yeah.
"Oh goodness, I didn't know this
Oh, of
was
course, yes,
happening.
we must
Yes,
do
we
this,
must
yes.
take care of this woman. You can't have her leaving this baby." So this foster guy thinks he's doing her a favor and like definitely not when she kind of finds out what's going on. So
I love
they
how it's
call her in.
presented, though.
Yes.
It's presented as this, "You'll be getting a special
She'll
Christmas present
gift.
from
Yes, when you get
Merlin's.
home from Merlin's and we're doing this just for you and you and yours, like they kind of
You
say.
and yours,
So
yes.
yes.
Congratulations, you have your job back, and it is a permanent position
Yes,
with
and
a
you get a bit of a
raise."
raise. Yes, and so they call her in and tell her all of this and frame it very strange, and they say, "Oh, it was a mistake that you were let go,"
Yeah, and
And
it's
so
David Niven doing this as well.
yes, and the foster man is just the foster place guy sitting there as well. So they frame it all nice and flowery. "Oh yes, raise and this was a mistake and there'll be a nice surprise waiting for you when you come home." And so she's like, oh, okay, sure." And then she also makes plans to be in a dancing contest with this other coworker
Yes,
later that
because we need
evening.
dancing contests,
Yes,
don't
of
we?
course.
Because
You
it's
got Ginger
children.
Rogers, you gotta dance. So he's like, if we get like second place, we could win $50 and
Yeah,
split it in half. And so she's like, "Well, I could use that money. Sure, why not?" So she goes home after, getting this news that she's got her job back. And here comes the man and woman from the foster place with the big basket of things and the baby and says, "Okay, well, we got you your job back, so now you can take care of your baby." And she's
Merry
like, "What are you
Christmas.
doing? Merry Christmas. This is not my baby." And they're like, "Well, we've heard this many times before, but now you have a job, so you can take care. You don't have to make this up and tell these lies."
Yeah.
And she's like,
You
"I'm
you have the
serious."
security of a life now that you can
Yes.
bring your baby up in a good
Yes.
home with good income. Good
Yes,
luck
and
to you.
yes, and this is the only reason we were able to get your job back. So, um, n- do we need to go to talk to Mr. Merlin and tell him how ungrateful you are and all this kind of thing. And
Right.
then yeah, so then they're like they just end up leaving and she's like, "No, like take this baby." And they won't take the baby and they leave her there. So now she's just like, "What do I do?" Here comes the guy to pick her up for this dance contest date. She doesn't know what's going on. And once she kind of realizes that Mr. Merlin was, in on this to get her the baby back and give her her job, and he was working with the foster people. They've even told her, if you bring the baby back here, we have your information. We'll just bring the baby back.
Yeah.
Like no matter where you drop it, they're connected to us. We're the kind of final stop. So no matter where you drop this baby, we have his footprints, so we'll know it's the same baby and it'll just come back to you. So she has like no options. So
But
she's trying to kind of
it also
hide the
does,
baby at first, which
do you not
makes for
think
a bit of a comedic scene as well.
it does, yeah, but do you not
Mhm,
think it also brings up a kind of question? There is a certain morality, I think, to this movie. It's not
mhm.
purely all the time just utter silliness rom-com.
Yeah,
It's not arsenic and old lace
yeah,
that is just chaos after chaos after chaos. There's reason to it. There's emotion to it.
yeah.
But do you not think it does bring up the question of, if a mother, you believe Ginger Rogers to be the mother of this baby, if Ginger Rogers keeps telling you, "I'm not the mother, please take the baby off me," surely for the baby's sake, would you not just do it? "We can't allow this baby to grow up motherless. You're an orphanage. What
Right?
the hell
Isn't that
else do you
what
think
you
you're doing?"
do? Exactly. Aren't you equipped for something like this? Um,
Or is
obviously
it,
she
or do the parents have to be dead? Is that the
is
rule?
that like yes, because I mean, had that baby just been left there and Ginger Rogers wasn't around, like they would
Well,
have taken that
exactly.
baby in and it would
Of
have been
course.
fine. So the fact that they're kind of
They'd
and
have probably done
obviously
tests then.
yes, and it's like they don't know this woman. She could have a drug problem. She could have all these issues, and this is why she's leaving the baby. But they're working off all
Right.
of these assumptions and calling that fact to force this woman to be a mother. Because what if she was like in fact a crappy mother generally, and that's why she was leaving the baby? But that's not important. It's just, oh, you're a living mother. We secured you a job, so that's all you need to raise a baby.
I mean, it does seem like that. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it is this kind of let's push motherhood on the world movie as well,
Yes,
which
and
it
show how
kind of is,
important
I
it is.
suppose.
Yes, I mean, then it definitely is the era for that kind of thing, that rhetoric that,
Although
um
I must say, I felt like if it would have been that, it, I would expect to see a movie of this kind in the 50s, for example. And to be fair, I think it was remade
mm,
with with Eddie Fisher and Debbie
oh,
Reynolds. I think it
oh,
was remade with the two of them. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know if Carrie Fisher may have played the baby in that version.
oh,
Just
okay,
just putting that out there. I'm not actually
yeah,
sure if that did
okay.
happen or
Did it
not.
have
I
the
would
same
like
name?
to think. It was called Bundle of Joy, I think.
Mm, okay,
Pretty sure it's from the 50s, definitely with Eddie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds,
okay,
and definitely a remake of this movie. But I am just
okay.
purely speculating. Baby Carrie Fisher
Carrie
may have
I wanna say I saw something that she had played a baby in a movie with them before, but,
that would make sense, I think.
yes, yeah,
Um, but I would expect it from a time like the 50s when obviously
yeah,
you're post-war, so everybody's wanting families and homes.
yes,
And the 50s is this whole, archetype and image, isn't it,
yeah.
of perfection, nuclear family, and it's all that Stepford Wives nonsense.
Oh, yes, yes.
The 30s isn't that. Even post Hays Code Hollywood 30s isn't
Yeah,
that. So I am quite surprised that this movie does take, as
kind
good
of
as it is as a rom-com and as great as and as funny and as fun as it is, it does seem quite, you must be a good family.
Yes,
about it.
you if you are a living mother, you need to be a mother, and no, you don't get a pass, you don't get an out. Doesn't matter what kind of mother you are, like,
Yeah.
if you're around, you should be the mother. Yeah.
It makes you think if it was a pre-code movie, and I'm not sure. I want to say movies like this tend to come from plays, but again, I'm
Yeah.
speculating. If this was a pre-code movie, I think it would be much harsher, and Ginger Rogers may have some sort of genuine alcoholism, or she'd be a working girl, for example, or
Yes.
something like that, and it
Yeah.
would be a bit more, intense as to why she may not be a good fit for a perfect image of a mother,
Yeah.
which is obviously, I mean, it still works as a concept, obviously, in the movie.
Yes.
And it just had me thinking about all these different kind of eras of morality, I suppose, that you tend to get
Yeah,
looking at
I
the
mean,
wider picture, looking at it in context of the world it's made in.
yeah, yeah, that's really interesting because, yeah, I mean, we just talked about kind of the mansplaining of things, um, and then obviously, just this push of motherhood. So, yeah, definitely an interesting movie to really look at the
Yeah,
time, and the era and what was happening in terms of, male and female dynamics. Um, definitely the story to kind of really look into those things. So, yeah,
yeah,
interesting. Um, but yeah, so she ultimately, gets picked up for this dancing contest date. And now she's like, kind of trying to make an excuse. I'm getting a headache. I don't think I can go. And he's like, no, come on. We have this whole plan. It's all set up. Like, and then the baby starts crying. She tries to kind of just
yeah,
ignore it. Oh, yeah, it's the baby next door. And then here crawls out the baby, and he's very confused, and she's trying to kind of explain, but she doesn't like give him the full story. And then ultimately she comes up with a plan. Let's take the baby, we'll make a stop, let's do the contest. So they end up going and driving to Mr. Merlin's house, and just kind of drops the baby off with his butler and says he's the one who can fix this. He has the means. He's the one who gave me my job back and made this whole plan with the foster people. So he's the one to figure out what to do with this baby. He can tell them this baby's not my baby, and that, the foster people should take it since he's the one who was a part of this whole arrangement. S
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and David Niven's really panicked about this when he
Yes.
realizes what's happened. And I will say as well, the butler,
The
as
butler is great. Yeah.
by E. Clive, who is a great character actor as well,
Yes. He's very
is
confused, he doesn't know what to do, he constantly gets being handed this baby, and they decide to chase them wherever they're going to give this baby back because 'cause they're like, "No, we're not taking this baby,"
yeah.
so then it becomes this, potato this hot potato game with this baby. Uh,
David Niven invades the dance contest, doesn't he, and
yes,
starts
and
storming around the
yes,
floor.
and he tries to get on the floor to talk to Ginger Rogers, throws the baby in the butler's hands, gets stopped getting on the floor. They tell him, "Oh, well, you can grab one of these girls over here and get a number and get on the floor." So he grabs some random girl, and he's just kind of dragging her around the floor trying to find Ginger Rogers to talk to her. The girl's getting frustrated, and then the dance judges are like, "What is happening here?" And he gets tossed out of the place. Um,
Very chaotically as well.
yes,
While E. Clive the butler is just fumbling and bumbling
bumbling with
behind
this,
him.
yes, and so ultimately they make the decision, "Let's get her home address and we'll go there."
Yeah,
So they get her address, and then we kind of stick with Ginger Rogers and her coworker at the dance contest, and they're kind of lamenting, "Oh, I'm sorry we didn't win the money. That's such a bummer. I thought we had it in the bag." And the whole thing was that was like the second prize, which is what they wanted, but they
yeah.
ended up winning first prize, so they got the trophy. And so it's funny that, just to kind of set up this thing that, oh yes, Ginger Rogers, first prize dancer, but it's not
Mhm.
what she wanted because she wanted the money. So they're like sad
Which I
about
feel
first
like
place. Yeah.
surely first prize should come with a cash incentive.
Right.
Second prize does come with a cash incentive. You can't
Yeah.
just give a massive trophy. What are they gonna do with a
What are they gonna
massive
do with that?
trophy?
Yes. Put money in the trophy, fill up the trophy with money. How about that?
Even if it was $50 and the trophy, and
Right?
then second prize was just $50,
Exactly. But,
you know?
no, so they were all kind of bummed about first place because, it didn't come with the
Funny.
cash prize. So he drops her home and he's trying to, like, make his way in. "Hey, I can stay for a drink. Hey, I can stay for a smoke." And she's like, "No, I don't think that's a good idea." But
It
he
was
kind
getting a
of
little bit
busts.
intense as well, and
Yes, yes, again, just the dynamics, and he kind of busts in, and here sits David Niven with the baby, and she's just like, and he's obviously very scared because he doesn't really know the full context of what's happening, but
yeah.
he also works at that department store, so he's very afraid of messing up in front of the boss.
Oh, yeah. As soon as
Yeah.
this is what I think I love and hate about the character that Frank Albertson plays, who is this, like, date figure, the date
Mhm.
guy, the co-worker in the movie, is anytime he's round Ginger Rogers, he's the most, "Oh, I'm confident, I'm full of myself, I'm really,
Yeah.
really in love with everything that's going on here. Look how great I am all the time." As soon as David Niven says hello to him, he turns into a cowering mess in the corner,
Yeah.
and it's hilarious because what's David Niven? Look at David Niven. What is he gonna do to you?
Right?
Absolutely no, there's no physical intimidation factor about
No,
David Niven whatsoever. Yet
no.
this guy seems to think there just really, really is. He
Well,
starts
yeah,
fidgeting, and
yes.
I know it's a employer
Plays
situation,
employee kinda dynamic.
but he acts as
That's
though
where the
he's gonna
fears.
beat him up.
Yes, but so he has this, like, fear of God in him seeing David Niven because he's like, "Oh my gosh, he could fire me if I'm here and whatever," so he kind of runs out, and then she's like, "What are you doing here?" He says, "The landlady let us in," and he is under this impression now that this woman is so determined to give up her own child, so he's still in the camp thinking, which was just one of my, like, things of just like, this whole movie, no one ever really believes her by the end, even by the end,
Nobody.
that this is.
Nobody.
Yes.
No.
So,
No,
I
this is
just
the
don't.
even by
So
the end, everybody's just resigned to the fact that, "Oh, yeah, this is our baby." That's how the
yeah,
movie ends.
exactly.
No,
So
they still don't believe it's not
I
actually
w
Ginger Rogers' baby.
yes, so for me personally, I would have liked to have it believed, at least by only maybe David Niven, to
Yeah,
believe that it was her baby, but she kept it anyway, and that would have,
yeah,
made her look even better, the fact that,
yeah.
she was thrown in this situation and still chose to keep this baby and whatnot. So I wish it would have been revealed to at least one person to know the truth that it actually wasn't her baby and believe her, but we
And
never get there.
absolutely, it should have been David Niven in that sense,
Exactly, exactly.
given what
Yeah,
happens romantically in the movie, because
exactly.
obviously something happens romantically in
Of
the movie.
course, of course. So yeah, he proceeds to scold her because now she looks even crazier for trying to give him this baby and pawn it off on him. And he like says he's gonna fire her because she's a terrible mother who wants to leave her baby and all this whole thing. And he gives her this speech. And as he's giving her a speech, like this little tendril hair, just unnoticed, come down, and he's shouting at her, and I'm like, okay. And I think it's also this is younger David Niven as well, so that
It is. To be fair, it's probably as young as you've seen David Niven,
yes,
isn't it?
yes.
So that's probably why I think
He's a little more dashing here than other
the
times.
mustache is in pristine fashion as well in this
Yes.
movie. David Niven is, of course, already well established in the Mustache Hall of Fame for
Yes.
consistently sporting great mustaches. But it is there is handsomeness to him.
Yes. Yes. So he's pretty dashing here, especially, when he's kind of shouting at her about being a terrible mother and that he's gonna fire her and all this thing. And then he kind of is about to storm out, but then he still feels this ping of remorse and emotion for
Yeah,
this woman and says, "So, are you going to ask me for your job back?" Like he's trying to give her this opportunity. He was grandstanding, but really didn't mean it, and kind of wants to give her this opportunity to
yeah.
to make it right and keep her job and all of this.
I'd
So
like to
ultimately,
I'd like to psychologically analyze, if I may, Janine, the fact that you first and foremost thought David Niven was attractive when he was telling somebody off.
I mean,
I'd I'd just like to sit with that for a little bit, please. No, we
I
don't have
mean,
to, obviously. I'd just like to bring it up.
don't call me out, okay? I've been exploring some things and,
I see,
we
I
don't
see.
judge here.
No, we don't judge here, we
This is
don't
a
judge
safe
here. No, it's
space, Morgan. This is
it
a
is a
safe
safe
space.
space. It's a very safe space,
But
and you
also
should
it was the tendril of hair coming down
yes,
during that moment as well. And
yes,
obviously, we immediately see that he is remorseful about it and he was only kind of just grandstanding and putting on this show.
yeah.
Um and ultimately, so she's just like, well, I guess I have to keep this baby if I want to keep my job. So she kind of just goes along with it.
Yeah, and, you get kind of this whole second act is both of them really trying to look after this baby. Obviously, it's more so it's Ginger Rogers, and she's going along with it because she's happy to have the job. She's developing a bond with David Niven, who is consistently coming to help her out and consistently
Yes.
getting involved.
Yeah, so now that I think even from the start of this foster man coming to him and telling him her situation, even though it was a misunderstanding, he feels a bit of a responsibility for her
Yeah,
and this baby. So he comes around, he tries to be helpful. When he had brought the baby back to her apartment, waiting for her to come back, he changed the baby's diaper, like wrapped the scarf around
yeah.
his monogrammed scarf around the baby and this whole thing. So he
Which is a
ultimately ends up
bold move
spending
to do with probably such an expensive
right?
scarf, you know?
Exactly.
That's gonna
Um,
take a lot for that to come out of
but
it.
well, she said she got it laundered for him and gave it back. So,
Have to be
uh
very well laundered.
yes, yes. Um, but yeah, he ends up kind of coming around and hanging out. So then he does come over with this baby book and tries to give her advice on how to
Yes.
feed the baby.
Nonsense.
um, yes, which ends up being this kind of nonsense thing, and only to reveal like the pages are stuck together. So it's just kind of this cute thing of him trying to tell her what's what. She's like, "I'm not doing that. That doesn't sound right." And then her to prove that he is in fact a novice just as much as her and has no clue what he's talking about. So
Yeah. I mean, I think
um,
that's what that as we've said, that's what I think the movie does do well
yeah.
and quite, I suppose progressively is the wrong
Yeah.
word, but reasonably so, is definitely make it clear that Ginger Rogers knows best in this whole scenario.
Yes, and generally, they kind of bleed that into other aspects too, because, she works at the part of the store with these duck toys, these variety
Which
of duck
are
toys.
the most horrendously annoying, noisy
Yeah,
things
some of
I've
them,
ever
some of them flap their wings, some of them quack, and they kind of walk around, and so
Are they supposed to
a
look like
whole
Donald Duck?
bunch.
A
Right?
are they supposed
Yes.
to actually look like Donald Duck? Because I don't is that actually possible? Is that allowed?
I don't think
Because this is
so.
an RKO radio picture.
Yes, no,
Let's
but,
do
who
do
knows
do the
who
do the
knows
do
how
the
that
thing,
stuff
do the
worked
thing.
worked at that
You have
time.
to do the
Beep,
thing.
beep, beep,
It's an
beep, beep,
RKO
beep,
radio.
beep, beep, beep,
Thank you.
beep, 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 beep,
RKO radio pictures. How do you have a
yes,
picture on the radio? You
radio,
can't. What? It's a
exactly.
radio picture.
Uh, yes. Yeah, so she's works in this area with these variety of duck toys, and she had brought one home for the baby, and David Niven was kind of playing with it and it broke. So she tries to tell him, your store is notoriously difficult for trying to return things and getting a replacement,
Yeah.
or getting your money back. It's a whole kind of rigmarole you have to do. And he's like, nonsense. This is my store. I'm sure I could just return this broken thing and get it a replacement right away. She's like, "I don't
We
think
return I
so."
think he says, "We returned over $50,000 worth of items last year. It was a great operation. I will go and do it within 60 seconds. I will pretend to be
Yes.
somebody else. I'll put on a disguise and a pair which is
Yes.
literally a pair of glasses and a hat."
Hat and a trench coat, and so he goes up to the counter. There's already a woman there, and so they make him stand in line. He gets, to the front of the line, and then he's like, "I want to return this. It's broken." And they're like, "Well, whose fault was it?" And he's like, "Well, what does it matter whose fault it is? We need to know where to place the blame." And he's like, "I just want a new one." And they're like, "Well, do you have your slip?" "No, I don't have my slip." "Well, I can't do this without your slip." And he's asking her if she has a slip because she's the one who bought it. And she's like, "I don't keep those slips around. Like, if I had a slip for everything I bought, I'd have, overload of slips." And so he's kind of parroting what she's saying to the guy, and the guy's not having any of it. And he's like, I'm going to get my replacement. I don't care. So he storms up to the counter with all the ducks and starts knocking all of them around until he finds the duck that's like his, and he grabs it and he sticks it in his pocket. And the dance date, who used to be kind
Yeah.
of a grunt cart worker, just got promoted to like management. So this is his first day on the job as management, and he sees this man in a trench coat and a hat
Like,
sticking
shoplifter.
products in his pocket, not realizing it's Mr. Merlin, and starts, calling him out as a shoplifter, jumps on his back, attacks him. And then when he realizes it's Mr. Merlin, he's all like, oh goodness, I'm so sorry. And
You
then
know, he positively wets himself when he realizes
yes,
Mr. Merlin.
who it is, because we saw his reaction to him earlier in the film. So ultimately, Mr. Merlin is very upset about being
Yes.
harassed in this way, on top of just, Ginger Rogers being correct about the difficulty of returning items.
Yes.
And so he ends up demoting the man back to his grunt cart job, and he's very disgruntled now. So now we see him kind of hatching a plan to mess things up for Mr. Merlin to get payback for that.
Yeah, and he
And then we
becomes
kind of
really kinda terrible, though.
yes, yes. So once now we're settled in with Ginger Rogers keeping this baby, the landlady is really sweet, and so she decides to help her out and says, "Oh, I'll help you. I have all, a crib, everything you're gonna need from when my son was a baby," and this whole kind of
Yeah.
thing. So she's very sweet and says she's going to help her take care of this baby, and will watch him when she's at work and when she goes out and all these kinds of things. So she has a nice little support system there
Yeah.
for her and the baby, and David Niven is constantly coming around, so they're spending more time together, getting to know each other and spending time with this baby, building up their rapport as well, and becoming genuinely friends. So I
Very
like
much.
this dynamic that of, because typically it's kind of like meet cute, fall in love right away, or like, uh, love hate banter type of thing. But
Yeah.
this is like a nice build of friendship. I think that's why I really liked Holiday as well. It was a nice kind of friendship that grew and developed before it
Yeah.
went into a romantic thing. So I
It's a
like that we're
slow
actually getting this genuine kind of silly relationship, and it isn't until, he says at the end, when he realizes he thinks she's gonna leave, is when he realizes, I don't want her to leave, I love her. So I love how
Yeah.
it kind of organically grows into this really kind of cute, fun thing before it, even after they've shared a kiss, like a New Year's kiss, it's
Mm.
still also they still kind of keep it pretty friendly, but there's the
Yeah.
kind of the side talk, like, I love her cute little conversation with the baby, like, "I'll tell you a secret, I think he likes me," kind of thing. So, how organic the development is, and it isn't like the smitten love at first sight thing, I think is really cute, and I feel like we don't see a ton of that, happening. There's usually at least one side of love, or it's immediate, or it's a banter, or it's something else, but they have a genuinely kind of cute friendship that develops.
Yeah,
So
I would agree with that, but it is nice to see
mhm.
the different styles of rom-com in that sense,
Yes.
isn't it? The
Mhm.
different styles of romantic blossoming in movies. They can't
Yeah.
all be the same structure exactly.
Yeah.
Otherwise it would be quite boring. But this whole New Year's evening, New Year's Eve that you allude
Yes.
to, obviously, in what you've just said, comes about. I mean, this doesn't even come about. Yes, okay, they end up sharing a kiss at midnight. Old Lang Syne goes off. It's all very nice, dancey, dancey, kissy, kissy. But she shouldn't have even been with him there in the first place. He had a date anyway that he forgot about.
Yes, like, he hadn't talked to her in, like, the last 10 days. I think it was probably that night that the baby was dropped with him, that he was probably
Yeah.
gonna go see her, and I think he said, "I'll call you later, or I'll talk to you soon." So then New Year's Eve, he calls her, "Hey, are you gonna be my date tonight?" And she's like, "Well, the last time I heard from you 10 days ago, you said you were gonna call me. So you can go alone. I'm sorry. I don't know who you're gonna find to replace me. It's 8 o'clock at night on New Year's Eve, but good luck. Maybe I'll see you later tonight, but I'm not going anywhere with you."
So they did
So
that.
he Yes, and he immediately thinks of Ginger Rogers, who's probably sat at home with the baby, and sure enough, she is sat at home with the baby doing nothing. So he shows up all dressed nice, says, "Hey, we're going out. Get the landlady to watch the baby. We're gonna go out for New Year's." And she's like, "I don't have anything nice to wear. You're dressed like this, and I look like this." And he's like, "Don't worry about it. Go to talk to the landlady, make the arrangements, and I'll get your outfit together." So he kind of looks through her closet, sees what she has, and gives her a bit of a pretty woman moment when he calls some security guys at Merlin's to pick up some items for
Yeah,
her, like some doormen or workers.
yeah.
So ultimately they pick up, a whole full fancy outfit for her.
And a
And he
big,
takes
glamorous
y
mink coat.
fur mink coat and like this, sheer shawl, this golden sparkly dress.
Yeah.
Um, and uh she's so nervous for him to kind of leave her side because she's just a regular girl. These are like high society fancy people, so she's like, "I don't know what to say to them. Please don't leave me. I won't know what to say." And he's like, "Don't worry about it, I got you." And so he ends up telling them that she's like Swedish and she doesn't speak any English, so that she won't have to
Yes.
worry about talking to any of them. So then they proceed the
I
whole
did
night to be talking fake Swedish to each other, and him kind of fake interpreting. And the
I mean,
girl
I
that
didn't
he was supposed to go with is across the table, just kind of side eyeing her, not expecting him to have been able to find a date so quick. So it's kind of a
no.
fun little dig at her.
I did not expect Swedish to turn up again in this week's movie, as it was, of
Oh,
course,
yeah.
present in last week.
Yes,
And
yes.
the fake Swedish they end up speaking to each other is hilarious
Yes.
and horrifically offensive, really, to anybody from Sweden, and
Yes, yes, they're literally just making
really
things
kind of
up that sound
so
vaguely Swedish, but it could really be any language because it's just nonsense. And
but
he
nobody
kind of
knows any better.
Yes, and so he kind of prefaces the night of like, "Oh, the men are kind of, wolves, and they're gonna pounce on you,
Mm.
so just be prepared," which is what ends up happening. So, like, every man, wants to take her out for a dance. So we end up getting this whole montage of, like, each entree coming, the soup entree, and she's out there dancing, dancing, dancing. Soup gets taken away, meal comes, she misses it because she's dancing, dancing, dancing with someone else. And he's
David
just
even
kinda
sat there looking bored.
miserable and bored because his date is off dancing with everyone. Then they take that, of course, away and they bring, like, a dessert, and she's dancing, dancing, dancing. So when she finally comes and sits down, what's waiting for her is, like, some melted ice cream because she's like, I love that she takes the little, New Year's Eve blower and, like, covers her mouth and kinda says to him, "I'm hungry." And he's like, "Well, you missed her. You were too busy dancing." And he's like, "We can go and I'll get you something to eat." She's like, "But I like it here." And he's well, then we'll stay, but I'm hungry. Which is just that felt so relatable in a lot of ways because I feel
Yes.
like I would have a very similar exchange. Like, I'm having fun, this is a beautiful place, I get to not have to talk and get to be silly, and, so
Basically, it's
I'm having a good
go and
time,
get me
but
some
I'm
food.
hungry. Yes, exactly, and bring it here. Um, it's definitely my type of energy, so I thought it was incredibly funny, that whole scene. And then ultimately they decide to go so she can get something to eat. And she's just like, "Okay," all kind of sad. So then they
Yeah.
go and, she says her fake Swedish goodbye to everybody and pretends that she can't say Happy New Year. So she says it like, Happy New, like she doesn't know the words. Like,
Yeah.
and then as they're leaving, they run into the girl he was supposed to take, and she makes some snarky comments about her. And then, Ginger Rogers, in expert fashion, says something snooty back to her in English, and so then she realizes, "Oh my god, she can understand me." And they
We've
storm off,
been
and
duped the
David
whole
Niven
night.
just bursts out laughing like
He
he's
does.
cracking up at this for a good hot minute, which is just so fun and feels very real. So I
Yes.
loved that aspect. And so then they kind of find themselves in this big mess of a crowd and end up kissing at the stroke of midnight. And even then, it's not like, it doesn't feel like this is like the climax of the film of them becoming a
No.
couple. No, they just kiss because it's midnight. They seem to enjoy it, but
Yeah.
there's no illusions about, oh, now we're a couple kind of thing. They're still in their very much friend situation, caring about
No,
each
that
other. So,
there's there's a sequence left to go in the movie,
yeah.
and look, the movie's not a long movie. It's like
No.
82 minutes long or
Yeah.
something like that. It's really short. But the next whole sequence is kind of finally where Charles Coburn comes back into the movie as the the father of
Yeah.
David Niven, who receives a letter,
An anonymous letter.
an
Yeah.
anonymous letter saying that he has a grandson.
Yeah.
Um, Alluding obviously to the fact that the baby is the child of David Niven and Ginger
Yes.
Rogers. This letter of it also comes from the co-worker who was demoted back down after aggressively jumping on
Yes.
David Niven's back.
Yes.
Obviously, nobody knows it's directly come from him yet.
Yeah.
But then Charles Coburn takes it upon himself for the rest of the movie, which is about okay. It's not long. It's probably 20 minutes of
Like
movie
the
left,
last
right?
20 minutes, yeah,
Yeah.
this sequence.
But for the rest of the movie, he is. I mean, he's teary-eyed sometimes when he sees the baby. Oh, look. Oh, the
Yes,
baby.
now he's under this illusion that his son has fathered this baby with this woman,
Yes.
and now he's a grandfather. So, David Niven had after their kind of romantic New Year's evening, he talked about them going for a lovely drive, and then she kind of brought up the
Mm,
baby and said, "Oh, well, I don't think that would, it might be too cold for the baby." But and he gets kind of sad. And so she's like, "But we'll be in the park all afternoon if you want to meet us and walk with us in the park." So he's like, "Okay, maybe we'll do that." So when she does go kind of back after this lovely evening, she kind of says, "I think he likes me, but I don't know if he likes you very much." So she's under these illusions that, he likes her, but maybe he is just not quite ready to, you know, take on this baby as well. So that's kind
yeah.
of where her head is at, that she likes him. She thinks he likes her, but she doesn't know that he would want to be a father to this baby.
Look, let's all take this time to remember that there's no reason why this baby is still in the possession of Ginger Rogers. This is the orphanage people doing a really poor job at tracking down anything or just being
Yes, or being very
dismissive.
vigilant about, looking things up and figuring out that this woman
Yes.
has a body that did not just have a baby, but whatever. Um, uh, but she's fond of the baby and she's kind of resigned herself to keep him. So,
Yeah.
um, and so they're in the park, and so he kind of sneaks away from church and says, "Okay, I'm gonna go for a walk." And like the father's like, "Oh, well, let me come with you," because he knows probably that's where he's gonna go.
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, no, no, I'm gonna be walking fast, and you won't be able to keep up. It's fine. I'll meet up with you later." So he goes to the park. He meets up with her. They're having a nice time. They run into this other snooty couple who's bragging about
Oh,
their baby,
right.
and so he's kind of pretending to be the father so that they can kind of tag team kind of talking shit about this other couple who's talking shit about their baby, and like and this funny kind of back and forth happens. Um Only for, them to kind of win the verbal sparring against this
Yeah.
couple. The couple kind of storms off, and then here comes David's dad to
Yeah.
be to survey this baby, and he's kind of obvious also being very vague about how he's saying it, but also in like awe of like, "Can I hold him? Oh, I recognize that chin anywhere," kind of thing. And they're just like, "Huh? What is that?" They're both very confused at why he's so, admiring this baby.
He gets
Um,
teary-eyed at one point. He's very,
yes,
very
he's very
intense.
emotional.
Well,
So
this is
then
what I
it
was talking about
yeah.
before. The movie gets sillier and sillier, and this whole concept is silly. But Charles Coburn treats it so sincerely that you kind of want it to be the case.
Exactly, because you don't like, I think the worker sent him that note to cause drama, but the fact that he's so okay with it and the fact that he's even excited about
Yeah,
it just kind of makes it nice. Um,
totally.
so David Niven is so confused, and then once he talks to his father, he learns what his father thinks the situation is and tries to, like, explain to him, "No, that's not the case," but he doesn't believe him. So now it's another case of someone not believing that this baby is not who, which would have been an even funnier reveal because now he could relate to what Ginger Rogers had been going through this whole
Right.
time, right?
Yeah.
But still never comes up. So ultimately, now the father, thinks that she's trying to keep the baby away from him, her, the baby's grandfather. And so he makes this kind of push to take the baby away from her.
Mm.
And so now she's very much protective and she's like, no, like, I do not want this man taking away my baby. He's going to try to bring lawyers and court and all of these things. So I'm going to run away with the baby. So she ultimately
Yeah.
sets out to leave with the baby because the father is determined. David Niven is trying to stop it because he's just kind of stuck in the middle. And ultimately, so she runs off to leave and she ends up kind of hiding out at the landlady's apartment because she's about to go, but then here comes the Merlins out front. So
Yeah.
she's very kind of scared. So she hides out in the landlady's apartment. David Niven goes to her place and, sees that she's not there, but ultimately he finds her and he kind of talks to her and says, reveals to the father, like tells him, that, I tried to tell him that I'm not the father and this and this and that. And, when I realized that you were going to leave, I realized that I love you and I don't want you to leave. And it was just very cute.
Yeah.
And then he kind of does say by the end that, yes, he is the baby's father. And so his father is happy and he's happy and she's happy. And it's very cute. So,
Yeah, because they even go through this whole trick that they try
yeah.
to Charles Coburn of finding people who might
Oh,
be the
yes.
father,
Yes, because 'cause they're like, if we find the actual father, the man
quote
who,
unquote.
quote, unquote, we can say is the actual father, then he'll know that this baby's not mine. So the landlady has her son kind of pose as the guy who's the real
Yeah,
father. The other department store guy comes and tries to say that it's him, and it's like this whole kind of mess of things, and Mr. Merlin is not believing any of it at all.
no, it doesn't go very far because
No.
they both come at the same time and try and say that different people are the father, and
Yes,
it's just a whole
it
load of
doesn't work.
nonsense.
Yes, he thinks it's his son just trying to kind of, squirrel out of responsibilities kinda
Yeah,
thing. So, um, ultimately, yeah, it becomes this thing where he tries to take the baby from her, and he's gonna use his money and influence and power to use lawyers and things, and so she's like, "I can't do this whole fight, I'm just gonna run away," but ultimately, all is revealed and,
yeah,
he realizes he doesn't want her to go and that he loves her, and if he is just decides to, love her and be with her and be the father to this baby, then he'll get what he wants, his father will get what he wants, and it's fine.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Because
yeah.
everybody's just resigned to the fact that the baby, who will grow up to look not a
Like,
thing
none of
like
them.
either Ginger Rogers or David Niven, is going to be theirs. I mean,
Yes.
for God's sake, I don't know what the future looks like for that baby. There isn't a Bachelor Mother 2, the coming of age years or anything like that.
Yeah, so we don't know, but I mean, his father's rich and his grandfather's rich, and
Oh
everyone
yeah,
seems to love him, so he'll be very spoiled, so
he will. He really will. But it's a it's a very sentimental ending, and it's a
Yes.
very kind of touching ending, I think, performance-wise
Yeah.
and you know, I suppose musically as well. The
Yeah.
music into what incidental music, that's the word I'm looking for. Incidental music in this movie, I think, is really good because it's goofy when it really, really needs to be,
Yeah.
and then sweet and sweeping
Yes.
when it
When we
it
have those
wants to,
moments. Yeah.
yeah, sit in your touching scenes, sit in your
Yeah.
sentimental scenes, which the ending very much is because you get the
Yes.
the close up of David Niven's kind of sad eyes,
Yeah.
that are just really soft
So
and sweet.
earnest and yeah.
Very,
Yeah.
very earnest, very,
Yeah.
very earnest. That just, you know, radiate this
Yes.
adoration at this point, almost radiate this
Yeah,
security.
because kind of the last thing he says is that he's this baby's father, and it's so sweet, and
Yeah.
yeah, very emotional. So yes, I close this movie out saying that young David Niven is a vibe.
Yay! I'm pleased to hear that. I don't know why I'm so pleased to hear that, as though I'm like championing the David Niven handsomeness fan club or anything like that. I don't
I
think I've
mean, I
ever
think you
done that.
are. I think you are.
I might be. I've just always assumed, given maybe it was given the fact that you seem to like William Powell so much, and I see them as one and the same very
But it
much.
actually took me a minute. Like it was like a combination of My Man Godfrey and even older him in How to Marry a Millionaire
Yeah,
or yeah, that had me
wasn't
really
necessarily Thin Man William Powell, was he?
no, no, because I think I was so invested with his relationship with Myrna Loy, like, they were, like,
Yeah.
you know, but the fact that he was kinda doing his own thing and that this young girl was having this huge crush on him, like, I don't know if that was playing into like, that dynamic was
Mm,
making me, like, also kind of have a crush on him, and then just him being so understanding and warm in How to Marry a Millionaire and, like, just, like, endeared me, so to older William Powell.
interesting.
I don't know what it was about older William Powell in that film, but yeah.
It is very interesting, but there you go. Bachelor Mother,
Yes.
1939. Garson Kanin directed and wrote.
Yeah.
Ginger Rogers, David Niven, Charles Coburn, Frank Albertson, E. Clive as the butler, if you want to go that far down the cast list. Wonderful little movie. Such a
Yeah.
cute movie. Can definitely be added, I think, as well, to a bit of a holiday movies watch list. You know, I know we're in January. I know
Yeah.
this is New Year's Eve on film, and I also know it's the poster image for this month
Yes.
series. It is a very significant New Year's sequence. It is
Yeah.
a very,
Yes. We
the
spend a lot of time in
turn.
this moment. It's a fun
We do.
comedic moment. It's a turn in feelings. Yeah.
Turning feelings, turning emotions and morality. The whole movie happens on New Year's. It's central to the
Comedic.
entire
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
Much like it was central in that same sense in Holiday,
Yeah.
to be honest, as well. It's quite similar in that way. But I think you can definitely put this on,
Yeah.
28th, 29th of December and enjoy yourself. It's not
Yeah.
Christmas Eve watching, I don't think, but
No,
it's
definitely more
the week
towards New
between.
Year's with that sequence. Yeah.
Um, and maybe that will be the next time I watch it.
Yeah.
This late, much later this year. Obviously, we're only in mid-January, for
Yeah.
God's sake. But what a great movie it was. Very happy to have
Yes,
finally
really enjoyed that one.
watched it. Janine,
Yeah.
what's coming next week? Why don't I know off the top of my head what's coming next week, Janine?
Is
So
it our disaster musical?
God, it certainly is, isn't it? Actually, because it is
Mhm.
episode 350 of
Eh,
It's a Wonderful Podcast next week. We're not doing anything overly special for episode
no,
350, but there
but
might be a little bit of a surprise.
yes, when you click on the episode, there might be a little something different that you see when you
Just a
well,
little thing.
when it pops up on your
Yes.
podcast that you follow, so
Just a little tiny little surprise, perhaps, just to commemorate
yes, yes,
episode 350. Because we
yeah.
thought, okay, we can't be doing milestone specials every 50 episodes. The next milestone special will be 400.
Yes,
It's a Wonderful
yeah.
Podcast, which will
Because
obviously be
250 is a
across.
general kind of celebratory thing, so we did
Yes,
250,
quarter
but
of a
yes,
1,000.
yeah, yes.
150. I'm not quite sure we ever did a 151. We did do one, but I'm not quite sure why we ever
Well,
did,
yeah,
because I think 150 is a silly number as
yeah.
well. But we didn't know how far it would last at that point.
No.
I suppose here we are, having reached 350 episodes of It's a Wonderful Podcast, and aren't we just all the better for it, Janine? Yes, we are.
Yes, so
Yes, we
many
are.
great
It is the
movies.
shining
Yeah,
light in
yeah,
our lives, or one of them. It is here always to bring a smile to your face listening. And
yes.
we hope to continue to do that, sharing the
Yeah,
love of old movies, bringing new ones out for ample discovery,
Yes.
and that's what we love doing the most.
Yeah.
You know, celebrating old movies, discovering new ones. It is what we do best here on It's a Wonderful Podcast. Of course, it is not the only show we have on the podcast feed, though. Morgan Hasn't Seen is there every Wednesday. It has been What's Going On, social issue movies, all January long. Much different vibes to Bachelor Mother, really.
Yes.
Although Bachelor Mother, in a sense, might be a social issue movie.
I mean, we
It
did
could
bring up
be.
some interesting dynamics in terms of the era and men and women and all that kind of thing. So, yeah.
It could be. And
Yeah.
next week's movie as well, San Francisco, 1936, which I did realise we didn't even say what the movie was. It is a
Yeah.
musical comedy / disaster movie, which is an
Yeah.
odd combination. We'll see how it pans out. Great cast.
Yeah. Clark
And
Gable, Spencer Tracy, I believe.
yes,
2 big names in there.
oh God, I can't remember the leading lady now. That's annoying, isn't it? Is it Anne Sheridan?
Oh.
No, if I say it's Anne Sheridan and then it's not Anne Sheridan, I just sound like an idiot. So it's probably just not Anne Sheridan now, is it?
Mhm.
Please look it up before the end of the
Yes,
episode
yes.
for me, Jeannine, while I ramble on about all this nonsense that I've got to get through now. But it feels like it's going to be a weird movie, but I'm kind of really looking forward to watching it and seeing what it's all about.
Jeanette MacDonald.
Jeanette MacDonald. Why did I think it was Anne Sheridan? I don't know. It was Jeanette MacDonald. Nice. Okay. There you go. What else do we have? Morgan Hasn't Seen, of course, every Wednesday. Subscribe to this podcast feed on all major podcast platforms, wherever you do listen and subscribe, and ding your notification bell, of course, on the It's a Wonderful Podcast YouTube channel. If you are watching this episode today on YouTube, you're watching this nice lengthy discussion on this wonderful movie. For all the other fun stuff we do have on this YouTube channel, Morgan's movie collection is here, of course. If you like me showing off old movies that I own, it's all behind me. You can most likely see it if you are watching. It's fun. There's all sorts of other stuff as well on the It's a Wonderful Podcast YouTube channel, obviously. But if you want to support us on Patreon or donate in any way, there are links in the description to do that as well. The social media has been scrolling down at the bottom of the screen if you are watching, but if not, of course, that's where you can find all the question videos, Jeannine, that you like to post around all over the place. Every week we do love doing that, as we spoke about before, and they are posted absolutely everywhere that we have various social media, so do keep an eye on them. And they are also on this YouTube channel. You can, of course, find us on the app formerly known as Twitter and on Blue Sky at It's a Wonderful One. You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at The Purple Dawn with a 3 instead of the E in there, because, Jeannine,
3 is a magic number.
On Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky at The Purple Dawn. All your delightful stuff is where?
You can find me at Jeannine Devine _ on Twitter, Jeannine Devine on Instagram, maybe TikTok.
Who knows? We don't know.
Threads. And Blue Sky at Jeannine Devine. If you want to get any merch for any of our shows, just check the description for the link or search G9 Design on tpublic.com. And if you want to purchase any of my art and print from, you can find that at my Big Cartel shop, g9design.bigcartel.com.
Well, come on. You have to do it. Your nice, finest, tight-lipped English David Niven, please.
Oh my God.
He's so stiff upper lip, Jeannine.
I can't do that. How do you set me up for failure every time?
You're not allowed to move your lips while speaking when you're doing an impression of David Niven. It's so tight.
3, 2, 1.
Bye. That's not my baby.